Glad to welcome Sheriff Mark Emery from Nelson County.
Good to be here.
Obviously, it means a lot to me because I work for you, and I've retired, and but then I think so much of you that it really is a blessing to work for you.
Well, I appreciate
don't think
that,
there's
Joe.
that many people left in our occupation that have the level of commitment that you do, not only to the deputies like me, but also to the community that they serve. And you serve some of the same communities I've served. I know you're over in Rockbridge. So what I'd like to do is just have you start out and say, hey, this is where I came from. This is where I was born, and all that different stuff, like growing up, kind of your memories growing up, and we'll just roll on from there.
Sure. So thank you again for having me.
I'm glad to have you.
It's a pleasure to be here, and certainly a pleasure to have you on our staff. So obviously, I became elected sheriff back in 2023, took office January of 2024. Was born and raised in Nelson County. I was the oldest of three siblings, two daughters. But Nelson County has always been my home. I have loved that county through and through. Graduated high school, class of 95. Left, got my degree from Radford University, made a lot of good friends and a lot of good contacts.
Okay.
First job really out was probation and parole. I did that for 18 months. Oh yeah. So I had an internship my last year in college.
Okay.
Down at Montgomery County, and ended up getting a job with Department of Corrections.
Okay.
On the P&P side in Pulaski County. I did that for probably 6 months.
That was probably one of the more interesting.
Oh my goodness.
Pulaski County has always been a little different.
Pulaski was different. It was a good experience, though. The whole time I had applied, my heart was with the Virginia State Police. I always wanted to be a Virginia State trooper, and I can tell you more about that. But got a job offer. I wanted to get back home out of Pulaski, just to get back home to be closer to family.
But at that point, you're already in the state system. So
I was in the state system. That's correct. So got an offer from District 9 out of Charlottesville, being a P&P for Albemarle County, Charlottesville City. Came there under the chief probation officer, Alan Rasmussen. Wonderful getting to know everybody, but I quickly learned adult corrections, community corrections was not for me.
You didn't want to monitor them after
I didn't want to monitor them. It
was
was urine screens, this, that, and the other. It was not for me.
Yeah.
So fortunately, I had gotten a letter from the Virginia State Police that accepted me into the 101st Basic Session that started March of 2001, and kind of the rest was history. That started my law enforcement career.
Okay. And so you worked in Rockbridge County, and I know that you had a significant event over there, and I know it probably is not the greatest memory of your career, but I think people don't realize something as simple as a traffic stop, how poorly that can go. Just talk about that a little bit, what happened over in Rockbridge on the
Sure. So at that point in time, I was a deputy sheriff in Rockbridge County, and the sheriff, Blaylock, at the time, he had initiated a traffic unit.
Okay.
And at that point in time, I was the perfect fit for that unit with my background with the state police. Just love doing traffic, particularly on the interstate.
Right.
So it was a Sunday afternoon. It was March the 8th, 2015. I'll never forget it. I was working. It was one of my favorite honey holes, if you will, mile marker 203, sitting in the middle between 81 south and 81 northbound. And it was a silver van registered out of Tennessee, came through it was 83 miles per hour at the time. It was a posted 70 mile per hour speed zone, so certainly reckless driving by speed. Go out early afternoon, 1 o'clock, I think, somewhere early afternoon. And typical traffic stop, had done tens of thousands in my career at that particular point in time. The van gets pulled over right at the Augusta County line, the 204.5, 204.6 mile marker on the right shoulder, and there's a guardrail there. And we'll never forget, it was a family. Get up, speak to the driver, get their information, advise I was going to write him a summons. I go back to my car. I'm sitting there and I'm writing the summons, and I'm nearing the very end of the summons to where, you put your name, your credentials, your badge number on it, and then you go up and to release the violator after their signature. As I'm putting my name on it, so I'm seconds away from finishing it, I hear the sound of metal being torn behind me, and I turn and I look, and I could tell that you just know the sound of an accident, so I could tell that there was a collision. As I'm looking, there is a tractor trailer that is pushing, has already made contact with the passenger car station wagon. Station wagon is turned, the tractor trailer is the power unit, the nose of the truck has already made contact and is pushing the passenger door of a sedan, of a station wagon. And I'll never forget, as I turn and look, I'm looking at the driver and the passenger of this sedan as they're coming by me. Now, the speeds are slowing. It's probably, 20, 30 miles per hour.
It's a lot of,
that's still a lot of truck coming. That's a lot of truck coming. And I'm looking at, and I'll never forget the facial expressions on these folks. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what in the world? How did this happen? Well, as I'm looking in my peripheral vision, I can see the trailer of the power unit is coming towards me, like the truck is being jackknifed at that point, and the momentum.
And there's no place for you.
There's no place for me to go. I'm already as close to the guardrail as I can. So our cars at that point we had just gotten laptop computers. So you've got a pretty busy area. It's a console right in there.
There's nowhere to go.
So I'll never forget what I did. I dropped the summons, and as the trailer itself is coming to me, I can see it's already starting to tilt over. So I knew it's going to fall. I quickly said a very, very quick prayer to myself. I dropped the summons in the floorboard, and I leaned over as much as I could into the computer.
Okay.
Very little limited space. I'll never forget the explosion.
And so you were in what kind of car?
I was in it was a brand new at the time. It was a 2015 Dodge Charger.
So it's not like an SUV?
No, it was very little limited space. That particular year in that particular car, what saved my life was, and I'll never forget, Sheriff Blaylock had mentioned this. When they were outfitting that new year of the vehicles that they had purchased, the Chargers, they had gone with a new cage system. It was a new roll cage system, had never really been proven before. So what ended up happening was, and had I been a trooper in a blue and gray, as you know, they don't have prisoner transport. I would have been killed instantly. So what ultimately ended up happening was the trailer did tip over on the vehicle.
It tipped over on your vehicle.
It tipped over on my vehicle. But since the power, it never disconnected from the truck. So as the truck is still moving, the only saving grace for me is that after the trailer hit my car, it still continued upwards. It missed by, luckily, the family from Tennessee that I had stopped. It made no contact with their vehicle.
So basically that your car is here and that truck is just swiping across the top.
It swiped across the top.
Over.
It leaned, yes. So had it fallen and leaned and stayed on top of me, I would have smothered. They wouldn't have been able to get to me, and I probably would have smothered to death.
But I mean, Kevin Young was talking about this the other day on the show. It's like it was a God thing. Like they installed it, and it just bounced. I guess it just slid across, and it didn't compress the back of it.
If it had dislodged from the power unit, so the fifth wheel stayed intact. And so anyway, once it made contact, thankfully, the trailer continued.
Kind of redirected it
northbound, and the whole thing flipped over right in the middle of the interstate.
Okay.
I never lost consciousness. I remember sitting up. I remember after all the glass exploded, sitting up. I reached down for my radio, which was in the center console, and I got on the mic. And of course, I'm barely able to make any. I could hear myself thinking that I felt like I was talking, but nothing was coming out.
Yeah, you definitely had the wind knocked out of you.
I definitely had the wind knocked out.
Got hit by a truck.
So obviously, but it knocked the radio system out. So the entire door, and I think we've got pictures of that. We may, but anyway, the entire driver's side door, the door was closed on it as I'm sitting in the car concluding the summons, but it ripped the entire door off. The door is found later underneath of the minivan from Tennessee that I had stopped. So what I remember what I initially did was I was able to turn my body, put both of my feet and firmly on the pavement. The first Good Samaritans that had stopped, that witnessed this, came over there to me, and they asked me if I was okay, and I just remember shaking my head in the negative. No, I'm not. And I'm trying to talk, but I can't get anything out. So I was able to get out. First responders got me out. I was driven from the accident scene at the Augusta County line to Augusta Health, and was later flown very shortly to University of Virginia Medical Center due to a collapsed lung.
Okay.
The long diagnosis was I was in the hospital for 2 days, or 2 nights, 3 days. Discharged going home, I had 6 broken ribs, and I ended up having a broken rotator. I ended up having a shattered rotator cuff here on my left. So long and short, I was out of work for 6 months. Very painful. Couldn't sleep. I had to sleep in couldn't lay flat on my back due to the ribs.
Would you just sleep in a chair?
Slept in a recliner.
Okay.
With a tremendous amount of pain medication. My fiance at the time, who's now my wife, she was a godsend. She was able to see me through it. She was with her sister when this accident happened. We got married that year in September.
I would say whatever she did for you, she did it right.
It worked. So she and her sister were at David's Bridal picking out wedding gowns and the bridesmaid dresses when this happened.
When they get that call.
They got the call.
That's a horrible call.
That's a horrible call.
So I would like to talk about that a little bit. I think all of us in law enforcement, we really do have the easy job. The significant other in our lives are the ones that we're not there to participate in these special events or any of these other things. And then when something tragic like that happens, it's not us delivering the message. I mean, we're fighting, trying to get through what we need to get through, but our significant others are left with so many questions.
So it was, he's since retired now, but this was Steve Funkhauser who had relayed him, and Chris Blaylock, the sheriff at the time, came to UVA to see me. But Steve had offered to pick up my father and my mother in Nelson County and bring them to the hospital. Right. My mother came with my wife, my fiance at the time. Okay. My father, he was battling cancer at the time. He had retired from his work, and he elected not to come. He was very emotional, very upset, and he heard from me as soon as I could get my wind back in me and get my thoughts and composure. I was able to make telephone contact, and he was fine. He was fine.
Well, so just to go back a little bit, what was it like growing up in Nelson County? I know I married a Nelson County girl,
right?
And she told me before I started working out there, she goes, "It is a very unique place to work.
It's unique. There's nothing to do,
but everybody loves everybody. It is one of the most integrated, loving communities that you could be part of.
It's rural. It's a very close-knit community. There's nothing to do there. If you're a teenager, we would either go to Stanton.
Okay.
Back in the early mid-90s, on Friday or Saturday nights, you would go to Kegler's or Downtown Mall in Charlottesville, or you would come down to River Ridge Mall and hang with your friends down here in Lynchburg. Outside of that,
because Waynesboro really didn't have a lot.
Waynesboro hadn't developed. I tell you, Waynesboro, my first duty assignment as a trooper was in Augusta County.
Okay.
Rosser, they had 1711 off exit 94 where it's all developed now.
Right.
That hadn't grown
all
up
the
and spread at the time.
Chick-fil-A and all
none of that
stuff,
none of that was there.
You had the downtown that was, I think that was kind of going out.
Stewart's Draft had more than Waynesboro literally did at that particular point. And now that they did.
So,
but to go back to your previous question, it was unique. It was just a close knit. When you grew up in a rural community like that, you just kind of you had your close friends, and you would spend time field parties on Friday nights, and you just kind of hung and did your thing.
And so what was it like? I know everybody that I've ever met, the Embry name, like everybody knew your dad. Everybody knew him. And you actually, had he always done like farms and cattle and things like that?
So he had. So my father, his professional job was the Virginia Department of Forestry.
Yes.
His secondary job was the Fallbrook Volunteer Fire Department. He was the fire chief there for 30 plus years. And then I grew up living on the farm, which I manage today.
Okay.
So it's a 300-acre beef cattle farm. It was my dad, my grandfather, and then really myself. I grew up learning, not really taking a lot of things to do with the farm. I loved spending time with my father. He was my hero. He was my idol. How I got to where I'm at today, at least the choices of my professional career, and I tell this, and the story was brought up at his funeral back in 2019. I'll never forget. I was in grade school. I was probably kindergarten, first grade. It was early 5, 6, 7 years of age. And I'll never forget asking him, Dad, if you could do anything else in your life other than be a fireman or associated with forestry, what would you do? And he looked at me and he said, son, I would have been a Virginia State Trooper.
Really?
I grew up idolizing this man. And to this day, and I tell some of my closest, even my command staff knows this story. I live every day still for my dad. I can't, it's who I am. It's who I will always be until my dying day.
But I'm sure your dad did the same thing for his dad.
There's no doubt.
I think that's why you have the name that you have in the county, is because the Embry name, to me, based on my brief experience, is a name of service. It
truly is. So my grandmother, who's still alive, 100, will be 101 years old this year, this December. She served the Nelson County Rescue Squad for 40 plus years. The actual Nelson County Rescue Squad building that's still there on Irish Road today. She was she was a founding member of that actually helped design that building and got it there. That building opened in the spring of '93. And we were the first family to assemble there for a gathering the fall of that year. She has been treasurer of the rescue squad, local church, the fire department. So service has always been, and again, I grew up, she raised me when my parents worked full-time and she was retired, and I would always see her. She was a founding member of the original volunteer rescue squad units.
So one thing that I was wondering about is, like, with that service and with Camille, like with the hurricane, what was that like? I mean, I doubt you were around during those times.
So that was in.
What were the stories that you heard from them?
Lots and lots. So, so Camille was in '69. I was born 8 years later. My father was a teenager at the time, and I remember down right there below our farm, there's a small Dutch Creek, which is probably at any point in time 7 or 8 feet wide. Was a raging river, probably close to what the James is, or at least the Rockfish is. He actually swam that the morning thereafter and crossed it to get to neighbors who were living there who were flooded and trapped. That was the first story that I had heard.
So how old would your dad have been then?
At that time, he would have been 17, 18 years old.
I mean, already
16, yes.
Already looking like, hey, these people need my help.
Yes,
I need to step out.
So a lot of news when we had the 50-year anniversary of Camille back in 2019. My grandmother had come. She was interviewed by a lot of the local media outlets.
She probably has all those stories.
She has the stories. Her name was mentioned and quite a few other folks that described it. So long and short, where our farm is located on the Rockfish River Basin. I'll never forget hearing stories from my grandfather. A lot of the fields that I now field and operate as hay, a lot of things were buried there because that's just how that they did things. A lot of, not people, of course, but a lot of old just sediments, debris, things like that just ended up washing there, ended up getting buried and covered up during those fields. I will never forget hearing stories from my grandfather about houses. Literally, you could see from their front porch where their house still stands today. You could watch from the front porch, and there were people on their roof floating by. And it was still probably several members of not the Embry family, but my mother's family. My mother's maiden name was Harris. Several members of her distant extended family perished and have never been recovered.
Yeah, I mean,
very, very somber story.
I could not imagine, like, I know the equipment and the technology we have now, how catastrophic that would be. I could only imagine back in those days.
Camille, if I'm not mistaken, still holds world records from a historical weather pattern,
a weather event
of the amount of rainfall that fell in 1 hour. But there are some folks that are still in Nelson County today that have memories of that. Good family friends that I know that get choked up, that lost loved ones in it, but they survived. And when they tell this story of how they had to survive, it's incredible.
It's almost
what
like,
those folks.
I mean, I feel like it's almost like prehistoric types.
Well, it happened, and everything happened at nighttime, and there was no advance notice. It was one of those freak of nature. It's not
like, I don't even think back then flashlights.
Probably not.
Probably lanterns, and you don't have any of the technology that you have now.
So some of the family stories, again, from the Harris side of the family that I heard were, kids got they're adults now, and these folks lost family members, but they were woken up by water just
gushing.
They're laying in their bed, and all of a sudden the wall caves in because landslides, mudslides have come through, and they're woken up by water and mud. And this is 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. Imagine the panic and the hysteria that sets in, not knowing what's going on.
And you don't even know where your parents are.
And you have no idea where your parents are.
So. Well, I mean, that's I don't know.
It's unfortunate. When you think of Nelson County, the history that falls back is probably one of the most historical marks is Hurricane Camille.
And a really dark period of time.
It's a dark period of time.
So let's talk about some positive.
Yes, sir.
So talk about what it's like to run for sheriff in an area that you grew up in.
Well, this run was unique. I mean, it's
okay.
So how I ended up having to do this, I ended up having to run against my predecessor at the time.
That's right, because you came from Rockbridge Rockbridge, Augusta, and then you went.
Yes. So I was hired. The gentleman, the sheriff at the time, the incumbent who I defeated in 2023, I was employed by.
Okay.
So Sheriff Hill had employed me in October of 2021. I came there. I came to Nelson from being a supervisor in patrol at the Augusta County Sheriff's Office.
And
he had a vacancy. I came over in a supervisor capacity. I was employed there from 2021 until 2018, October of 2018.
Okay.
I worked there for 3 years. I left October 1st, 2021, 3 years to the date.
Okay.
I had my 20 years in with VRS, and I got a job offer, very great offer in the private sector from an insurance firm, Virginia Farm Bureau, who's just right down the street. So as I left, I had to get licensed to take the job, which was a very challenging aspect. I worked 2 years in the field at Virginia Farm Bureau. Had always wanted to run for sheriff. I didn't want to leave the sheriff's office, but I was not happy at all with the direction that the office was going, things that I saw. And I won't get into all of that stuff, but
I just think people don't appreciate how difficult it is.
It's a life-changing event.
Yeah, and I respect people that say, I don't agree with what you're doing. And it could be something as simple as like, the job that law enforcement has to do, it is very clear cut in my opinion. And if you have someone that doesn't view it very close to the way you're either extremely miserable. It's a helpless feeling. You're out here trying to service a community. You see victims and you don't have the backing of your, and I'm not saying that's what happened. I'm just saying from a law enforcement standpoint, I respect somebody that says, I can't do it the way you're doing it. I'm going to do something else. But then you come back and you're like, we're going to do it the way I feel like it needs to be done. So it gives you a unique perspective.
Where I was unique at, Jewett, was I had backgrounds from 3 other agencies. Mm-hmm. I had an agency, the Virginia State Police, which if you're a trooper, you understand. If you're not, there's some that hate the state police, but I always look at them, and I still do, as kind of the pinnacle of law enforcement.
They are probably, I think, in all honesty, as far as agencies, when you look at the quality of product that they produce in their troopers and the level of training and expertise that they have in the job that they have, there's nobody better at the job that they do.
Totally agreed. So I come to this with that foundation, and I never wavered, even though I departed the state after almost 10 years of service to go to a local agency, and I'll never regret that. Because I at some point needed to learn local law enforcement to be able to do the job I'm currently doing. But I have that foundation.
Background. Yeah, the background of the structure of the state police.
Structure of the state police, and until you work close with them or you're a trooper, most people don't understand. The state police manual is the Bible.
It is.
And you strictly adhere to it. So there is a reason for that. And I bring that. I bring every day, you probably see the shoes I'm wearing now. Yeah. I wear these and you see me at the office. I get this. I look at myself compared to other sheriffs across the state, and you can see a difference, a little bit of a difference. And again, I'm just saying I'm modeled by what I knew and what I was introduced to in law enforcement.
Well, you embrace that culture.
Yes.
And I think it's a great culture to embrace.
Yes.
And I think it's really cool that you bring that culture back and apply it in a service type environment that you have.
Exactly.
Is a full.
So my background is a little bit more diversified than some that have only been, started in a brown uniform or whatever. So anyway, I have that culture and that diversity, if you will, to bring to that. What I wanted to do is, and again, I immediately saw hands-on, Nelson County has been, we'll just be honest, it's been behind times a lot compared to other places I've been, both with the state TAC teams going throughout Division 6, seeing what other rural counties have, and then seeing the counties that I've worked, where Rockbridge was, where it is now, what Augusta County's been able to do. And these are all counties that border Nelson. And I've always had the mentality, Nelson, the citizens of Nelson deserve better. They just do.
Absolutely.
And what I knew when I worked previously under my predecessor, there were a lot of things that I wanted to do and I tried to do, but you can only make changes
from the bottom up.
But you have to have that support, and you have to have somebody that sees that vision. We didn't have that. Okay. And I was coming at this from not a position of power and a position of leadership with the ability to make those changes. So I knew if it's coming to Nelson, there's only one way it's going to get there. It's going to have to come through me.
Right. And that, I'm sure that was,
and that started the journey for me.
But that wasn't an easy. I think one of the worst things right now in politics is, and I think is reflected in it, especially on the, and I shouldn't say this, but like on the national level, you really don't have to care about your image at all to run for national office, because you will get destroyed. So. You will get destroyed. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter if you've done anything wrong.
The nature of politics now, I learned very quickly, very, very quickly, even at the local level. The thing about the local level is the people that are coming at you, whether you win or lose, you know where they live. Right. You still have to, unless you get up and leave, and I was not about to leave my Nelson County had I lost, because my farm, my family is there. You got to see these people most likely every day or at some point in time.
Yeah, and
at the state and federal level, you're not, but you realize why people don't want to get into politics. It's brutal.
It is ruthless.
It's ruthless and brutal.
It is unbelievable what. And I one of the hopes that I have with doing this podcast is bringing positive and realizing in everyday life, it's still another human being. They might not think the same way that you think.
Very much.
But you can't, and people like you that can come on here and say, this is my story, they might not like your policies, but they should recognize, like, here's somebody who heart is in the right place. He's taken licks for you, whether you are the one that put him on him or not, and he continues to serve. I think if we spent more time understanding, like, liberal, conservative, I think we all want an America that looks like, hey, let's talk about this. Let's have let's communicate with each other. Let's not find pods of people that agree with us. It's amazing if you go, and I know you go all of these different places. You have these community events, and there are people that probably don't agree with your viewpoints, but they embrace the fact of, like, hey, this is my sheriff. This is who's elected. And when you start the conversation there, it's amazing what can happen.
It is. And these events that I go to, I go geared for one thing, and that's to discuss public safety. I can talk about public safety all day long. I don't think at any of my town halls, and I do them quarterly, so I'm up to about 6 going on 7 now for this year. I really don't get asked anything when it comes to left-wing, right-wing politics. My views on social issues, I completely stay out of the weeds on that stuff.
Well, from my standpoint, there's no reason to get in it.
Absolutely.
We have a very simple mission in law enforcement. I think we can get, what worries me is I read today in the news about the FBI, on the January 6th stuff, like what information's out there about that. It is terrifying to think that we have people in government that are willing to go that far for their agenda. But then when I think about it, I also think about the wonderful people we know that work for that same agency.
Absolutely.
And they're like phenomenal human beings, and they're all about
and they're
doing the work
caught
right.
up in the political mess, if you will. They want to do their jobs. I've had opportunities to work with the folks that we've worked with and have conversations with them. They're good boots on the ground people,
and willing to serve the general public and local law enforcement.
Absolutely.
I mean, and that's one of the things that I think is so cool about what you've done is you've reached out to these big agencies, national agencies, and they have come and they have stood up for us. I know that one case that we had with the the national from China, like that was because you had already worked out a relationship with the FBI.
Absolutely.
And it worked well. It worked.
Absolutely.
And that lady would have she would have been a victim that never got any type of restitution whatsoever if it hadn't been for the relationship
Absolutely.
that you established.
And that's the one thing that I've seen over my many years of service in Nelson and other jurisdictions throughout the Commonwealth is the conflict between agencies. It has never made sense. We go back to the state police. There are sheriffs, there are police chiefs that like, we don't want you in our county. We can't stand VS. And I have always embraced, we despite the color of our uniform, we work together. We all have a common good. One, that is to make sure our officers go home and we all go home to our families.
Absolutely.
But we absolutely work for the common good. We're here to protect and serve with one mission and one mission alone, despite how much money you make, what you offer. To me, it has never been about power or ego. It has always been about the communities that we serve, and we do an absolute disservice when we can't even get along with other agencies.
I think what is crazy, and I know you won't go into this a lot because I know you're elected.
Oh, you never know.
But I think one of the things that I learned working on a state task force is the divisions mean something in the state police. I've never seen, I've seen conflict between agencies, but the conflict between divisions when it comes to narcotics is unreal.
So I worked in the patrol in BFO when I was there, and I can assure you I've worked Division 3, Division 6, and they're completely night and day. And I've always heard stories from my friends at Division 1, Division 7, Northern Virginia, and Southwest Virginia. They're all run a different way with different levels of expectation. So if the uniform patrol field operations is that way, I have no doubt that BCI, your CID folks, are experiencing the same thing.
And the thing is I think though once I've had many opportunities. One of the opportunities I had was work with tier 1 type groups overseas, and one of the things I look at is like they're high drive individuals, and if they don't have a fight, they will look for it within themselves. And I think maybe that's the problem with law enforcement is we have all these resources and all these humans, and if we can't find a target, we're going to go after each other. And maybe we need to do a better job of like saying, look, this is our mission, and explaining to the public, this is our mission, and let's get out there and do it.
Again, I say it all starts at the top. It starts with leaders that understand their agency's role and that want to do what's best for the communities that they serve.
Right.
That's where I'm at.
Yeah. And so talk a little bit about let's just say your first 6 months in office. Like what did you think went really well? And what did you think like, oh my gosh, I feel like I was planning a 1-day hike and I am going to be here for a while.
Well, I knew it was going to be difficult. I had reached out to some folks that, Glenn Phillips, who we both know, phenomenal person, retired from the state. He was already my number 2. I knew I had to have a solid number 2, known in Nelson, knows the Nelson community, but I can trust in law enforcement to be my right-hand man.
Solid decision.
He was already on board. I already knew where there were some other pieces, and I knew the people that I wanted to bring in. It was just a matter of who fits where and what works best for them. Once I got that command staff set up, which would have been most of it in my mind was prior to the election, but then as soon as the election hit, one of my guarantees and promises was to be fully staffed day one. We were on the right trajectory for that. What I didn't anticipate was so many existing deputies that were at Nelson had left and went to Amherst County Sheriff's Office, which they had every right to do. I met with everybody,
Right.
and some just decided to leave for the fear of the unknown. Let's just be honest. It was the fear of the unknown.
I think a lot, just being close to it is, I think from my standpoint, is if you know something is a certain way, the old grass is always greener on the other side. But Nelson was a known for them, and they were like, I've probably heard the same speech you gave them before in this county. I don't know if I'm going to trust at this. And I think that's one of the biggest things for me making the decision to come is I knew you. I knew what type of person you were. And it wasn't like you weren't going to fluff it. You were just going to say, look, this is the way it is. Go do the work.
So here's what we had to work with. By the time the dust settled, by the time we had our swearing in ceremony, which you were there, and I'm grateful for you for reaching out to me and us talking and having your experience and leadership coming with us. The only person that was left in the patrol division, there was a lot of vacancies to begin with. So I don't want to think that there was an exodus of folks, but there was also a lot of vacancies that needed to be filled. But we had one individual in patrol. The only person left that was assigned to patrol had just graduated the police academy in December. So he was still in the field training officer process. We had 3 school resource officers. We had 3 court security staff. That's it. We had to fill all these additional patrol vacancies. So I ended up hiring, and again, my hiring was limited because I didn't have the.
You didn't have the authority.
I didn't have the authority, and I didn't have the resource to do background investigations. I had to rely on my gut. I had to rely on phone calls. I mean, I didn't have certain things at my access that I did today or January 1 once we took office. So. I ended up hiring a lot of officers, deputies that had previously worked there, that I had worked, that I felt comfortable and I knew. And then we brought in some folks from, of course, we had some folks that left Amherst after that 2023 election that wanted to leave and come to Nelson. So we got within, I think we still had 2, if not 3 vacancies January 1. We quickly had that filled by May. And I was very, very proud of that. We hired 2 new people to go to our academy for the June class. But outside of that, we brought in a lot of skill set. We brought some folks in that averaged, I guess our average years of experience was about 10, which is pretty good this day and age.
No, I think what I don't think people appreciate the market right now for law enforcement.
Oh, you're skimming the. I mean,
you do not have, like, if you're an experienced police officer and you have,
you're a dying breed.
You're exactly right. There are so few people, and that's one of the things I actually talked to somebody the other day about it. Our producer over there, I talked to her about it the other day. Like, starting programs where it's almost like they have a client that they have here that they do heating and air conditioning. And basically they brought them on, and when they graduated from high school, they had a job. And I think that is, and I know Jessica Ligon does the same thing with her for her vet techs.
Very much.
I just think it is a very difficult time.
Yes, it absolutely is. The biggest thing that I knew that we wanted to do, I wanted to brand the agency. Again, taken away from myself, it's recreating the agency, the image of the agency, giving it a new face. It starts with social media and being able to put that out there and having fresh faces. We wanted to go with a new uniform to give us a new appearance. It took a while to do, but we're there now, as you can see, and we get a lot of great positive feedback. I'm sorry, I wish I'd wore mine today.
That's on me.
It's all good, but we wanted to we wanted to bring a fresh face, or with my fresh face and the admin, we wanted to give a new patch, a new uniform. We stepped away from the brown, and I wanted to more or less give the agency. I wanted the deputies there to have their voice and let their voice be heard. So what I decided to do is let them have a vote. We have department meetings every quarter, and I feel like if I'm going to be transparent with the community, which I promised and I'm doing, I need to also be transparent with the department. I need to let those guys feel like their voice matters.
Right.
And so we brought in different uniform variations and let them vote. And unanimously, what we decided to, some people say we're another version of the state. I understand that with our coloration, but we look very professional, and we went away, which I don't think we do, but some people that don't know any differently think that. But our patch is unique, and it's a symbolism of what Nelson County represents. And we selected a few venues that are symbolic of that. And again, very, very proud of what we've been able to put together.
I think when you look at those uniforms, you stand out, and I think the community that we serve stands out.
It does,
and that's why people come to Nelson County
very
for
much.
Vacation, and there's a reason why people stay there to live, even if they have to travel to find employment.
That's right. Yes, sir.
And so talk a little bit, I know this is a totally different topic, but you know how my brain bounces. Talk about what
I hate to think what's on the internet.
No, I just think about like the farm life. Like, what does that look like trying to run a sheriff's department and trying to maintain a farm?
It's not easy this time of year. We're in hay season. So, I've got 30 head of cattle.
Okay.
And so I have a beef cattle cow-calf operation. My oldest son, Zach,
now,
great
how old
young
is
man.
he?
Zach will be 25 this year.
Okay.
He is a mechanic at Carter Caterpillar in Fishersville.
Oh, so big engine.
Yeah, big unit. He does all my service work for me. Great young man.
That's awesome.
Couldn't get by without him. And he lives on the farm with my mother. My father passed in 2019, so I took over the operation. And I've redone the farm. I have completely redone it from where it is, new fencing, new watering system, and everything. But going back to it, it's difficult. If I didn't have a great staff that can run the office day-to-day operations, I wouldn't be able to do what I do. Now, I'm at the office every day, with the exception of if I have something come up that's pressing right now. This time of year, all of our farmers. It's wet.
It's wet, and as soon as it dries, you're going to have to be cut more.
Yes. So I've got I do round bales. Everything is machine related. I've bought some advanced updated equipment that really helps me and speed up my operation. But for me, it's therapeutic. I built the farm up the way before my father passed. He and I both entered into a contract with a 10-year contract with the Thomas Jefferson Soil and Conservation Unit out of Charlottesville.
Okay.
What they did, they came in and put in all these new fences and waterers. He never got to see that. He passed in 2019. The fencing and watering systems were installed this summer of that year. I'd like to think he's very proud of that, and that has just kind of helped us.
I think that
diversify our operation.
And I think he would be proud of it.
He would,
because I think one of the things, the older you get, you realize, what does your legacy look like?
Yes.
And your dad gave you a great legacy, but he also left some things undone, because like you have technology, you have all these things that are added. You have like what you're talking about. I would say they don't like cattle to be a certain distance from creeks and rivers.
Yes.
And so you have to comply with all that, which is a good thing, but you also have to have the technology and the thought process to get you to that point.
When the day my father passed, it was January 30th, 2019. He was there at the house surrounded by myself, my mother. My sisters weren't there, my wife, and some very close friends and fellow farmers of his. And I'm going to tell you, I mean, I had always helped my dad, but I had never really made any farm decisions, because it just hadn't worked out that way. And you want to talk about going back to the drawing board and fear of, how am I going to do this? I'm a deputy sheriff at this point. I'm in Nelson. I'm working 12-hour rotating shifts. I've now lost my father. I've got two boys. I've lost my hero. What am I going to do?
Yeah.
What am I going to do? I've got to learn. At that point, he was still, and Dad was one of these guys that he loved his family, but he didn't like to let go of the reins. So I had always helped him, but I had never managed and never made always let him make the decisions. I had to learn to do it all. And I mean, I had the background, but I said, so fast forward the day he was buried, I left that service. I thanked everybody for coming. I went and I started doing stuff on the farm, one to kind of take but I said, if I'm going to do it, I got to do it and not look back. And to this day, I haven't looked back. It's therapeutic for me. It gives
sure
me
a lot. There's a lot of crossover though. It's a lot of crossover of like you have your growing seasons and everything else. And I think if you learn how to prioritize, make tasks, you know what's important, what's not important on the farm, it relates back to what we do day to day.
It does. I take pride with two things. I love seeing an incredible agency that we've been able to build with good, solid people, equipment, the technology that we've been able to bring with some of the new stuff. And then on a personal note, I take pride in making beautiful hay every year, 3 times a year, during cutting seasons for me, and then incredible calves. Yeah. I've got a cow-calf operation, and when you go to sell cattle, I take all my cattle to Stanton Market. That's just, I'm on the north end of the county. It's more convenient for me. But when you unload your cattle and you have all the experts, I'm not an expert by any stretch, but when your cattle bring in top dollar in that top 99th percentile, you know you're doing something right.
Well, that's legacy.
It's legacy.
That by definition, here comes the inbreeds. They always have, they do the little, I think people don't realize how much preparation, just like you were talking about hay. I think people think it's really simple. All you do is go out there and cut it. You rake it, and then you roll it into rolls. But then when you look at the rolls, like you go by some of these farms and you're like, I don't know who rolled that.
So the stress, so there is stress in this, and all farmers will tell you that care about their product. Usually come late April, early May, I'm fixated to WSET 13 George Flickinger's weather forecast 3 or 4 times a day because I need to know when that window is going to be. I'm looking at my work calendar, making sure I don't have any appointments because I need 2 or 3 days of good time to be able to cut, tedder, rake, bale, and move out of my field into where it's secure. And that's it, because you're looking at that window. And I'm constantly talking to my staff when they're like, hey, can we have a staff meeting? I'm like, nope, I'm cutting hay. Can't do it.
Yeah. And it's not like you can tap out and go, hey, come over here and do this for me.
So
it's on you.
It's unique. Not all sheriffs or administrators have to do that. Now I'm fortunate now I'm in the position that I'm in. Prior to being elected to this office, I was having to do this, like I said, when my dad passed, I was still a patrol deputy.
Oh.
I was working 12-hour shifts, and we were doing night shifts, so it would be times I would get off at 6 a.m. If I had to cut or maybe get 3 or 4 hours of sleep on my own, because I have no help to do this. Right. My son helps me when he can, but I understand.
Yeah.
But outside of that, this was all my thing. My wife and mother, I haven't taught them yet how to operate a tractor.
Don't say train.
Exactly. Terrible. Yeah. I used the wrong T word. Taught. I have not taught.
You're getting you use the T word of takeout because that's what you're getting tonight. You're not getting fed.
That's exactly right.
So, anyway.
But it's not easy, and I bring that up because I enjoy doing this. I could easily just sell everything, but that wouldn't be what my father would want. So,
well, I would say there has to be a lot of pride, not like the bad pride, but the pride of like, man, the product that I produced. I know I train dogs, and like when I see the dogs that I've trained, I think that is the coolest thing. That is the closest thing as an extension of me.
Yes.
Because good or bad,
yes,
that is a reflection of
absolutely
me. And so
absolutely.
I invest in that way.
Just like any business leader, I mean, if if you're manufacturing a product, you want it to be top notch. You want it to. You take pride in it.
Yeah, but I think the difference between animals and machinery.
It's totally
different because you have
to invest.
Yeah, and you have to be so in tune with what they do day in and day out. People think they're riding through the fields, and I guarantee if you ride through your field, you'll know where each one of those cows are physically, nutritionally, and everything else. And
100%.
When you have to, and if you don't pay attention, you miss one day. Like I know right now, no farmer, but I know that my garden is suffering because it rained for 2 or 3 days and I can't catch up.
A lot of folks when they go to a supermarket and they're just buying a steak and hey, I want a steak for the weekend or something. They take for granted what all went into producing this.
Well, at this point, it probably isn't from here anyway.
I was going to say, probably not.
So what I know you can't recommend, but like just as a PSA, people that want to buy local, are there places local in Nelson County that sell beef? Or
Yeah, sure.
Okay, all right. So that I guess it's just a matter of just going out there and finding one that works.
Yeah.
Do you sell your beef commercially?
I don't. No, I take it straight
to the market
because it takes a process to do that. You really got to
go
train the animal, and you got to do this.
You have to do the USDA and all that other stuff too.
Well,
to sell it?
I don't know how they. I don't really know how they do that, but there's a lot of time and investment that goes into getting that animal to a certain size. You really have to take a lot of
science at that point.
It's a science,
yeah,
and it's time consuming. No, sir, I get them to a certain size and weight when they need to be coming off their mother, and that's it.
And that's, I don't know. Like, to me, I think like you have a calf and all the things that go into that. Like, I do think people take for granted like all the effort that goes into that. So back to the department. So like from your standpoint, I don't want to make a general statement, but I will. Law enforcement. How good of a job do we do explaining to the general public actually what our job is? Because like I feel like ever since George Floyd, I think we have adopted we're in a safe place. We interact with the public in a way that makes them comfortable, as opposed to no. And I know you're not like this because I work for you, but how many leaders do we know that are like, their thing is, my best deputies are the ones that I'm not getting complaints on, because they're not contacting the general public. If you don't get a complaint, there's probably a reason you aren't contacting the general public. And you definitely are not acting as you can say you're a protector and everything else, but letting stuff go doesn't work. And so like for me, from a law enforcement standpoint, how do we transition the general public? We're very fortunate in Nelson. I feel like for the most part, we're very supportive in our community. Obviously,
very much.
Obviously, we'll get like, he's driving too fast, he was using this, all these different things. But for the most part, they want law and order. They do. And so, but in other areas where they have the different opinion about law enforcement, what can we do and what can leaders do to prepare the public to say, we have all these violent acts committed in this area. If we send law enforcement in there, they are going to have that same violent interaction. It's probably going to be on our body camera. You can either choose to interact with, we can either in law enforcement go after the people that are responsible for the violent acts, which are going to create a violent act more than likely, because most violent people do not voluntarily comply. Yeah. I think that, I mean, you know that.
Jewett, there's only one way to do it, and I've learned it. It's transparency. Okay. You have to have transparency. There's a reason why I do the town halls. One, I feel like it's needed and it's an expectation as a constitutional officer. I need to do that. But the community just doesn't understand what we do. And it's not just us. I've learned this from, I'll use VDOT for an example. We brought VDOT in back in November, and I asked, and they did not want to do this, but they decided to do it.
Sort of like the calf that didn't want to get pulled along.
That's right.
But once they got there,
but they saw what we were doing. They saw that we had an issue of fatalities back in Nelson County during a high number of fatalities on the 29 corridor in a 1 week time span. And the critiques that I was getting for not having enough deputies out there, I went to VDOT, and VDOT came back to me and like, well, Sheriff, we can't do this unless we do this. And I said, well, no, I didn't know that. It was just an example of something that they used.
And everything else.
Well, they use something like, they know you can't put I didn't know this. They brought to my attention in a closed door meeting that we can't put an extra traffic light on 29 in Nelson County if we're going to go that route. And that was something that people were asking at some intersections where we were having trouble. And they said, if we have to put a traffic light at this intersection, we by law, whether it's federal or state, I don't know, I didn't go into the weeds, we have to remove a traffic light on the 29 corridor from another jurisdiction. I said, well, if I don't know that, these people in Nelson County don't know that. Why not get out and educate? That's what I feel like. That's where I feel like everybody lacks. It's just education and communication. When you do that, you gain public trust.
Okay.
When you gain public trust, you can't go wrong. You can't go wrong. Now, do we make mistakes? Yes, we do. Do I own them when I do it? Yes, I do. That's why I say I believe transparency and accountability.
Okay.
If I make mistakes and I come out and I say, yes, this happened, and I'm sorry for this, and it's not going to happen again, and we'll do better. Will there be repercussions? Yes, but I don't lose that trust from the community.
No, they respect the fact that you own it.
That's it. So when I'm transparent and I get out every 90 days and I say, this is what we've done, these are the stats of what we've done, and people answer questions, I constantly have it. And I don't mind that. I feel like that's what we need to do. And I really do. I've noticed locally some other agencies are starting to put out on their social media sites statistics. It's worked for us. I don't know if they're doing that following us, or they seeing it's working, or it's just something that
they won't admit it, but I would agree. Like
I follow other agencies too, and I'm not saying that we need to be the premier. What we're doing works for us, and it works for me.
Yeah, and they can see whether it works for them. But so what would you say if someone were to ask you, like, so what is the mission of the Nelson County Sheriff's Office as it relates to public safety and service?
So for me, the mission, obviously, it's protecting and serving, but I want to be in the community, which I already am. I want to have that community trust, and I want to provide services. I want to see our youth.
Okay.
We see across the country, we see a decline in people wanting to get involved in law enforcement.
Right.
Now, we can sit here and have a debate as to why that is and when did that break down. What I want to do is I want our youth. I'm not going to hold this office forever, but however long I'm in there, I want it to succeed, and I want it to continue to grow and strengthen those ties and binds with our youth. That's why we're focusing so much right now on our cop camp, our SRO programs, and things of that nature. But to answer your question, I want to bring a community together. I get together with church leaders. I go to a different church pretty much every other Sunday. Wherever I'm invited, I go.
Okay.
And it's not easy, but it's if people can see me and I represent this agency, then they know that we're here for the community, and that will never waver as long as I'm in the seat.
Right.
It's building that community, which Nelson again has never had, and that was one vision that I had that we wanted to do, was to strengthen that. Yes, while we make arrests and we do these other things, we want to provide services and just.
So, along those veins, from a prevention standpoint, I feel like law enforcement, I don't feel like that where we're at, but like, how do you go from a reactive, and I think about, and I'm trying to lead you into it because I am most impressed with your desire to make community safer, active shooter training, things like that. Because like for me, it's too late to train. You know, I had a t-shirt a long time ago. It said something to the effect of, if your life depends on having a skill, it's too late to learn it.
Yeah.
And how much skill have you provided these deputies since you've been there?
Oh, it's been a 180 versus what they've had in the past. So obviously, what one of my biggest campaign platforms was, we want to train biannually, not just annually. And the reason we do that is, you know, from your years of experience, you have to keep your mind fresh.
Yes.
And you learn from muscle memory. And so what we've done, and we've been proud to make contacts with our alert. We've adopted the alert active shooter training.
Right.
We've got a collaboration with our schools, so we know when we can do it in our schools. We're hitting it at spring break, fall break, and we're continuing to use the assets that are available to us. There's other agencies out here that love to train, and we've got those resources. Now we've got that bond. So if we're training in April, when school is on their spring break session, which we have done the last 2 years, and now we're following that up in the winter with Virginia State Police TAC teams that are coming in and just providing scenarios to our guys. We're keeping that mental freshness. Now we're incorporating our volunteers and our professional fire and EMS staff that have also, they train not necessarily the volunteers, but not to a degree and a level that we just threw at them a couple months ago.
So
this is all brand new.
What was the feedback? I know I wasn't there because I was in and out a lot, but what was the feedback from EMS and fire after?
Oh, they said, why haven't we done this before?
Isn't that crazy?
And it's free. Their feedback was, my God, how much did this cost you? And when I say, this is free training, these people travel across the country.
They even fed you.
They bring you food, they give you the knowledge, and they give you the best training possible. All we have to do is make ourselves available, have a venue to provide them, and we have to be receptive to what they're teaching us, and we learn from it and we build from it. And the question, they said, thank you, this is the most incredible training we've had, but why haven't we done this before?
And so how do we build that moving forward? How do you feel building how do you transition into the next phase in Nelson?
So obviously you surround yourself with people that believe in what you want to believe. All of our fire. So luckily for us, we have one paid organization, Wintergreen Fire and Rescue, and Chief Sheets and Assistant Chief Mike Riddle are completely on board from that standpoint. The Nelson County Emergency Services Council, which is comprised of our local fire and rescue chiefs, they have bought in on this. Our Nelson County Dispatch Center has bought in, and certainly all of our deputies have. They want training opportunities. Right. They want it. They want that. So the big thing for this, there were two national scenes that I take from all of this. One was Lakeland, Florida. Parkland and Uvalde, Texas. And I brought this up, and it's a failure to train and it's a failure to act. And we won't dive into what DOJ found and what those results came from all of that. But I always said Nelson is unique. And this, God forbid if it happened here, but our guys are going to be prepared. Our school resource officers are going to be prepared. It's not the first time they're going to see this. And we need to give them all the tools on their belt and the resources to be able to handle this. God forbid if this happens. And if it happens in an adjacent jurisdiction, we give them all the tools to respond and help our fellow neighbors out. So I'm committed to this, Jewett, and
I think it's been an amazing thing. I think whatever marks that you have in your brain, like, hey, this is a watermark of where we've arrived at what we need to do.
So we're already on the books for 2026 in April. So, and those guys love it. I mean, you can tell the folks that come here to assist us, they love working with people that are always receptive and want to train. Yes.
Right. Well, I appreciate your time. It has been, I always enjoy spending time with people, especially people that have the same thought process as I do as far as service. And
man, that could be dangerous.
I know, especially somebody that's rose to the highest level and is implementing a plan. I think it's awesome.
Well, it's good to be here. I thank you, and we'll have to do this again sometime. And again, I feel terrible. I'm not wearing our new uniform.
No,
again, I'm very, very proud of it. But
I wanted you to be comfortable.
Absolutely.